couple of our favorites who are going to be joining us. The one and only Bob Sturm from The Ticket. It's going to be a Sturm Center Ultimate Dallas Sports Show tonight. And we've got our own Michelle Montaigne. And you guys, we got so much to talk about tonight. Yes, claps all around, indeed. We got so much to talk about. And Bob, because I am a subscriber to the Sturm Stack, I happen to know that you were at the Mavs game when all this went down on Friday night. Yes, I'm curious about your first blush when you got the news.
Well, I just have to correct you. It was a Stars game.
Sorry, my bad.
Yes, but I was at a game.
Yes.
I was at the AAC. And yeah, I kind of thought we would at least see what happened in today's games to see if somebody else would get into the plot late. But, as things began to get closer and closer, and especially once Pete Carroll got hired, many signs pointed that they're going in this direction, whether we are overwhelmed or not. And they're comfortable with it. It seems like this is really what it's all about with Cowboys football at times, is the comfortable move. And they went and did it. So full steam ahead. I don't want to hold anything against Brian Schottenheimer. It would just be the process that we would question once again.
Man, that is almost exactly what I'm going to be saying tomorrow on the morning show. I mean, verbatim. Because again, Schottenheimer seems like a fantastic fellow. He's a great guy. And I know for a fact he is well liked in the locker room, including, by the way, by the quarterback, right? Which is really important when the quarterback makes $240 million and is the highest paid player in the entire league. But the process was so problematic because, like you, Bob, I thought, listen, they're hesitating here. His couple of interviews finished on Wednesday. They still hadn't made a move on Friday. I'm like, okay, maybe they're going to reevaluate, but they don't. So, Michelle, when they didn't, did it strike you over the head? I mean, I know we talked about it afterward for quite a while on WFAA+, but after having a couple of days to digest it, what'd you think?
After we talked at length Friday night when the news came out, I think what was most interesting was the fact that we know he had that initial conversation that was, 4-ish, 5 hours with Schottenheimer on, what was that, Wednesday, I believe. And then the follow-up was, or maybe it was Tuesday.
Tuesday, then Wednesday, yes.
Was Wednesday. So there likely weren't additional formal conversations taking place. So in that line of thinking, if they already knew by, say, Wednesday, why did Jerry wait until Friday night? And Joe, I think we know because we talked about it, for so long, but the timing and the decision to make that announcement when they did, you just have to think all of the dominoes that fell from the time that Mike McCarthy didn't return at the very, at the 11th hour of his contract expiring. And then all of the subsequent steps of the fact that Schottenheimer was the only person who had 2 interviews. They were much longer than any of the other 3 candidates' interviews. And then they wait basically 36 hours from the time they last talked to him to announce that he's their guy. Just none of it adds up to something that I think can give the fan base confidence that this is the guy that they wanted from the jump.
And listen, I'm not asking for much. I would like a plan. Can we just for one time feel like we've got a plan? I mean, Bob, is that asking too much?
No, it's not. And that's the thing is as we look at this, it really personifies any one of 500 coaches could do this thing that Jerry said long ago, because that's the type of value he seems to put on the office. That's the type of power he gives to it. That's the type of search they have. I mean, Joe, they have every advantage in the NFL. They have more money than everybody. There's no cap on coaching or front office. You could pretty much go get the 5 best coaches in football and put them all on a super team staff you've never seen before. It could be the coaching Avengers down there if they wanted to. But if you do that, if you hire guys that are in high demand, then they make demands of you that, look, for me to be successful, for my program to be successful here, I need things to be a certain way. And we know that the moment a coach says, I need things to be a certain way to the Joneses, they're eliminated from contention for the job. I mean, this goes all the way back to Jimmy. When Jerry wanted to change terms with Jimmy back in 1994, that was the end. And ever since, they named the staff, they named the terms, they cut his legs off for power with the players. I mean, and this goes on and on and on. And that's why, again, I hope this works. I really do, because it's fun to follow a good football team. But the self-sabotage has to end at some point, I would feel.
You know, I'm glad you brought up the any of 500 coaches line, because, Bob, I think when the postscript is written about this latest era in the Jerry Jones, career, I do think that's going to end up being his Achilles heel, right? Because I think he really believes that. And I also believe the more and longer that we've been through this, that phrase, when it was uttered about Jimmy Johnson, setting into motion the events that have created this 29-year drought without having made it to a conference championship game. And I think that is the absolute root of it, and it's the Achilles heel. And because of it, I think it's born out of hubris. I also think it's born out of the inability to humble yourself, right? And listen, I do know that Jerry Jones listens to a lot of people. I know he listens. I know he asks for input from a lot of people. But at some point, you have to let that coach take the reins, and you can't undercut him, because it's a sport that is filled with alpha males. And when they see any weakness in that coach, and a lot of times that weakness is made obvious by what Jerry Jones does, and it just won't work. And unfortunately, I don't see that changing, because again, this move feels like status quo.
I'm going to jump in here and say there's a decent chance that we'll still be in that same 7-10, 10-7. The way Cowboys fans are talking, this feels like a disaster, like we're about to walk into a 3-14 season or something potentially worse. This doesn't necessarily feel like that. Most of the issue will come down to how the roster is constructed, and a lot of it boils down to whether Schottenheimer is going to have the chance to succeed, especially with Dak regressing a little bit in terms of his mobility and how he's played recently. But if you've looked at Schottenheimer's career, he's had some bad luck with quarterback injuries. Russell Wilson, the Brett Favre back with the Jets. He was also there for the Mark Sanchez years. There was some aspect of his work that was fine when they were running the ball well and being aggressive on that side. And looking at the Cowboys, how they're presently constructed, the run game is a mess. And a lot of it has to do with the guys up front, where there are a lot of question marks. So, Bob, my question to you is, it feels like that he can succeed, but is this team going to allow him?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of twofold, right? Because, yes, head coach really matters. It's a very, very important position, maybe the most important position in the National Football League, although you could argue that getting a Patrick Mahomes isn't a bad idea either.
Sure.
But the other thing is, of course, these guys are at the mercy of the tools they have in their toolbox, and that means roster construction. And so to see them sort of self-sabotage Mike McCarthy in his final year, we kind of were sadly, we were able to kind of predict the outcome, that when you go to camp without a running back, and you go to camp with one wide receiver, and you have no defensive tackles, and you're literally acquiring defensive tackles on August 15th,
right,
many of them. Yep. And it just shows that your roster was kind of trash. And they made a conscious choice to sort of, kind of let things die on the vine, which honestly, you can kind of see a consistent path there, guys, until they pull the trigger on the Dak contract. And so that was like a inconsistent move in 2024. The one thing that didn't make sense based on all their other moves is locking in a quarterback to the highest contract in the NFL. I'm not saying that's a bad idea, because I was kind of for it, but I'm also for, if you're going to do that, now you got to do these other moves, including have an idea who your head coach is going to be. If you kind of chase your current head coach out of there, make sure you're at least thinking you're upgrading. And I don't know that they really think that in their hearts right now.
There was so much time they had to work back channel communications, and it didn't happen. And unfortunately, it just smacks of not having a plan.